Welcome back.
Welcome back, family, to Hear Us Out. I'm Renee.
I am Kyrie.
Once again, thank you. Thank you so much to our longtime subscribers who have been with us since the very beginning, which seems like so long ago, but feels like yesterday. And to all of our new listeners who are hearing us for the first time, please stick around. Make sure to hit the subscribe notification so that you can continue to get updates and to hear us out.
Yeah. Thank you. And on this episode, we will be beginning
Yes.
our reading and analysis
Yeah.
of Friedrich Nietzsche
Uh-huh.
and his work considered to be his magnum opus. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
Yeah.
Right. We talked about this on the last episode
Right.
about the things that led us to this point. Right. And now that we are here,
yes,
it seems I would just say like we wanted to read this after Plato because we were like we know that this is going to be a totally different direction, but still coming from that same philosophical vein and trying to correct and or perfect a particular system of living, if you would. But I did not expect for the drastic shift such as we got.
Yeah, but I'm actually, like I told you, I find it to be relatively refreshing, at least to venture into something like this. And as I was reading it, I told you, I said, because as I was reading, I'm having these thoughts, and I'm like, okay, we're going to be shaking our heads a lot. I think a lot of the stuff that he discusses, we have touched upon many times,
different ways,
different
ways, shapes, and forms. But because Thus Spoke Zarathustra is not very long, it's only like 60 pages, maybe. So I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna walk that pages and read it.
Read it all at once.
That in like a day.
Right. No big deal, right?
But then I read the prologue.
Right. And like, okay, we may have to take this.
And y'all can't see, but now I have like just a page full of notes.
Notes, right?
Of a prologue that's like I don't know, like 4 pages. Maybe?
Yeah,
like 4 or 5 pages.
Yeah, if it's even that long. Really.
Yeah, not that long. But it is chock full
of great
stuff. All these little thought provoking moments that I just couldn't pass over. So just like with Plato's Republic,
right?
We're gonna take it one at a time.
Yeah,
we're gonna go through it. Chapter by chapter.
Maybe a couple of them we might be able to.
Yeah, maybe a couple of them.
Maybe.
Like,
maybe.
We'll see. Maybe not. We'll see how
we'll see.
How it pans out.
Right.
But we are starting with the prologue. Right? And for those who are familiar with Middle Eastern faiths,
right?
You may know
of some world religions.
Oh, some world religions,
right?
But you may know of the name of Zarathustra because Zarathustra was the founder, if you would, of the Zoroastrian faith, right? Which is a dualistic faith that contends that there is this all-powerful figure of goodness and wisdom known as Ahura Mazda, and there is this other equally powerful figure of evil and discontent known as Ahriman. And they, battle it out.
Yes, battle, yeah.
And they obviously they have their own myths and tales and all that stuff. This particular story doesn't really have anything to do with that,
right.
But it just it borrows the name of Zarathustra, and it also takes place, in that particular region where Zarathustra came from, or at that particular time. And like we said, this is something of Nietzsche's attempt at creating his own system of beliefs. His own philosophical axioms that is able to definitely affirm life, beyond, the trappings that it finds itself in, even in his day.
Right.
And we're going to see
Because if I remember correctly, I think this was written right at we're coming. I think it's at the end of the 19th century. I
Yeah,
think that's
1883.
yeah. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. So.
So the turning of the century,
Hmm.
right? Almost into the 1900s.
Right. We're coming into the
Mhm.
20th
Into the
century,
20th century.
and what's happening, particularly in Europe, Germany at that time. You know, all of that. Angst. Is I guess is playing some type of role, especially when you have this type of despair and hopelessness around you. You want to, I guess, try to find something,
Yes, yes,
you
because
know.
like we said before, Nietzsche was battling, at least in his time, in
Uh
his
huh.
way, the and this was starting to think of this is a big thing with a lot of writers and
Hmm.
creators
Hmm.
in Europe.
Hmm.
Not even at the time, because even Dostoevsky,
Yeah. Yeah.
deals with
Hmm.
ideas like this and
Right.
those from the underground. But
Hmm.
the idea of the collapse of the moral
Moral. Hmm.
structure of humanity,
Hmm.
right? And for both Dostoevsky and Nietzsche,
Hmm.
because Dostoevsky, I think,
Is
was a Catholic,
right.
and Nietzsche isn't a Catholic,
No. No, he's
but
not.
he does recognize the role
Hmm.
that faith plays
Hmm.
in society in being a a fixture,
Hmm.
an external fixture
Hmm.
of morality.
Right.
It's something of a guide pole, a linchpin
Hmm.
that is able that allows us to define ourselves in relation to something else,
Hmm.
right? To this grander, concept of God and all that stuff. And in doing that, it creates a sort of affirmation for life.
Hmm.
But in the turn of the century, or
Yeah. Come right.
approaching it
Right.
in his time, the power of the church, and the strictures that it stood upon are no longer unassailable.
Hmm.
Right? There was the whole, there was the Renaissance, and
Right.
there was this whole push toward more practical, scientific, experimental,
Hmm.
thinking.
Hmm.
And we talked about that before on how that was an attempt to put the realm of
Standing.
understanding
Right.
in the hands of the everyday people,
Hmm.
because during that time, coming from that philosopher king, son king type of philosophy,
Hmm.
only those people, only
Right.
the church and your kings, only they were able to truly
Right.
interpret reality,
Hmm.
right? And you got what they disseminated,
That's right.
and there was a level of control
Hmm.
there that made the people uncomfortable.
Right.
And then when Isaac Newton came out with his calculus and all that stuff, even though Isaac Newton was a man of faith,
Right.
right, it later on created this burgeoning idea that we don't need a church, we
Right.
don't need a king,
Hmm.
to tell us what our world is.
Hmm.
We can understand
Understand it
these
for
things for
ourselves.
ourselves.
Right.
But in doing so, it had the unintended consequence, excuse me, if you would. I don't think anybody really wanted for this to happen. They,
Right.
they only were seeing this as a chance to get from under the
Yeah.
oppressive,
Yeah.
heel of the church,
Right.
right? But in doing so, it left a hole, a
Hmm.
vacuum, where that moral structure kind of collapsed in on itself, and there
Hmm.
was nothing there, and there was now this a radiating sense of nihilism that was
Hmm.
spreading through the intelligentsia
Hmm.
at the time.
Time. Right. Yeah.
So Nietzsche creates his this story here
Hmm.
in an attempt to battle
Right.
that
Nihilism.
nihilism and
Hmm.
create, like we said, the ultimate affirmation
Hmm.
of life.
Right. So here we
So
are.
yes, so
Hmm.
let's begin.
Hmm.
Right? So it starts with Nietzsche, not Nietzsche, Zarathustra,
Hmm.
who's Nietzsche standing in the story.
Right.
Zarathustra has been up on a mountain
Yes.
for 10
Hmm.
years. And in that time, he has, kind of like Buddha, who meditated under a tree, right? Or Jesus and his 40 days and 40 nights and all that stuff. He has found enlightenment, and he feels compelled to disseminate this enlightenment to the people at large, right? So he's been up on this mountain contemplating existence, contemplating life, right? And now he feels inside that he has the answer, right? He has to come out, right? So now he's coming down from the mountain. He's coming down from the mountain, and on his way down from the mountain, he runs into a saint, right? A saint of the old faith, yeah, if you would. And they have a little back and forth here. They have a little back and forth, and we're just gonna. It's a little quick little part, right? Zarathustra went down the mountain alone, and no one met him. But when he entered the forest, an old man who had left his holy hut to look for roots in the forest suddenly stood before him. And the old man spoke thus to Zarathustra: "This wanderer is no stranger to me. He passed by here many years ago. He was called Zarathustra, but he has changed. Then you carry your ashes to the mountains. Will you today carry your fire into the valley? Do you not fear an incendiary punishment?" Yes, I recognize Zarathustra. His eyes are clear, and no disgust lurks about his mouth. Does he not go along like a dancer? How changed Zarathustra is! Zarathustra has become a child, an awakened one. What do you want now with the sleepers? You lived in solitude as in the sea, and the sea bored you. Alas, do you want to go ashore? Alas, do you want again to drag your body yourself? Zarathustra answered, I love mankind. Why, said the saint, did I go into the forest and the desert? Was it not because I loved mankind all too much? Now I love God. Mankind I do not love. Man is too imperfect a thing for me. Love of mankind would destroy me. And Zarathustra answered, what did I say of love? I am bringing mankind a gift. Give them nothing, said the saint. Rather take something off them and bear it with them. That will please them best, if only it be pleasing to you. And if you want to give them, give no more than alms, and let them beg for that. No, answered Zarathustra, I give no alms. I am not poor enough for that. Sure. The saint laughed at Zarathustra, and spoke thus, see it that they accept your treasures. They are mistrustful of hermits, and do not believe that we come to give. Our steps ring too lonely through their streets, and when at night they hear in their beds a man going by long before the sun has risen, they probably ask themselves, where is that thief going? Do not go to men, but stay in the forest. Go rather to the animals. Why will you not be as I am, a bear among bears, a bird among birds? And what does the saint do in the forest? Asked Zarathustra. The saint answered, I make songs and sing them, and when I make songs I laugh, weep, and mutter. Thus I praise God. With singing, weeping, laughing, and muttering, I praise the God who is my God. But what do you bring us as a gift? When Zarathustra heard these words, he saluted the saint and said, what should I have to give you? But let me go quickly, that I may take nothing from you. And thus they parted from one another, the old man and Zarathustra laughing as two boys laugh. But when Zarathustra was alone, he spoke thus to his heart. Could it be possible this old saint has not yet heard in his forest that God is dead?
The line that's probably the most misquoted, most misunderstood.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's kind of get into this.
Right.
Right. So Zarathustra's coming down from off the mountain.
That's right.
And it's funny that Zarathustra has a name.
Right.
Zarathustra's name.
Right. But
the saint
is just saint. Right. Just the saint. Right.
And he's kind of speaking as a monolith for this whole system of belief. Right. And by that the whole system of belief we mean the old faiths. Right, the old way of believing in God, the old way of affirming life. Right. And the saint asked Zarathustra, where are you going? I saw you come this way. Right. All those years ago. Right. You climbed up on that mountain. Right. And now you come down a changed man. I recognize that look in your eyes. Right. You brought ashes up to the mountain, now you come down with fire. Do you not fear an incendiary punishment? These people are not ready.
That's right. They're not ready. That's right.
you are willing to give them.
That's right.
Don't give them anything.
Give
right?
them nothing.
Because they are
right.
imperfect.
That's right.
If you give them anything, give them alms, and they'll have to pay for that.
Right.
Don't give them anything.
That's that tithing. Yeah.
Don't give them anything because they are imperfect.
That's right.
Only God is perfect.
Right.
So only God is truly worthy of your love. Right? Because Zarathustra says, I love mankind. That's why he's doing all this. Whereas the saint doesn't love mankind.
Right.
He can't love mankind because in his own words, they are imperfect. Right? The saint believes, and this is what I wrote down in my notes here. The saint believes only God, i.e. the perfect good, is worthy of his love, whereas Zarathustra is willing to give his love to the imperfect man. Love is not a judgment of value, but a sense of the human reality. Right? And that's the thing that Zarathustra is able to exist in that the saint can't exist in. See, the saint can only see his love as a judgment of value.
That's right.
And to him, it's like casting his pearls to swine. Right? Like they aren't worthy of his love. Right? Whereas, like we've said many times before on the show, that like I said, that there is no system of value when it comes to these things. Right? That love is a sense of reality.
Right.
And if we are to get theological for a moment, because that kind of language is throughout this entire story. And I even touched on it before in our last episode when I talked about, Jesus and stuff. But the idea, right? The idea in the Catholic faith, Christian faith, or any faith that, secular faith that believes in, a one God, right? Is that God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent.
Right.
He is all powerful, he is all knowing, and he is everywhere.
Right.
Right? So, if that is the case, right?
Yeah.
And also, if God is omnibeneficent, omnibeneficent, right? God is all good.
Right.
Right? God is all good. God is all loving, all powerful, all these things. Right? If that's the case, then how is it possible for anything to exist outside of God's love?
Right.
God's love isn't a judgment value. Right? Right? Because you've been said many times that God's love is given to the worthy and the unworthy all the same. Right? So God isn't, God, by your own description, is not something that can be taken away from the people.
Right.
But the only thing that the saint has done is he has become increasingly more anachronistic with, he's fallen out of step with the people because the people have outpaced the system of belief, right?
Sounds familiar.
So he calls that being imperfect. The people have been made incompatible with his system of belief, with the way he worships his God.
Right.
But the way you worship your God is merely the access. God is something else.
Right.
Right? So the thing that the priest is, the saint is doing here is somewhat idolatrous. You're worshiping the axis, but not the thing in and of itself. It's like you're worshiping the sculpture and not God itself.
Right.
Right. That's what led to the old iconoclastic troubles in the past. Right. That's where the word comes from, because there were people who were because they were creating all these beautiful works of art, and they thought that people were more worshipful of the art than of God and of itself. Same thing with the saint here.
Right.
He's allowed for his system of faith to replace God in and of itself.
Work.
And so he has become so anachronistic that he has made himself unfit to exist with people.
Yes, we're definitely going to have to get a camera because it sounds so familiar of what's happening now. Is that we have allowed, the faith or religion for that it's it has it's stale, and your people are outpacing it versus loving the people. You have decided
loving your people enough for your faith to move along with them.
You have decided to
erect a concrete wall,
right, which stagnates. It judges. It divides.
It is instead of your faith being used as something as an axis for change, as an axis for progress, it's become regressive. Right. It has been limiting and trying to pull people back down to a particular perspective.
And this is why you have so many people speaking today. They've done polls and studies of why so many people, various age ranges, who are all, I guess, turning away from religion or turning away from faith because it does not allow for them to be the people that they are, the people that you say that God himself has created. So yeah,
and by your own metric, it's impossible for them to be outside of that.
Right. Yeah, because God is all knowing, all loving, and all this and all that.
If he's omnipresent and omnipotent and not all this omni stuff, how is it possible for anything to exist outside of that? It's impossible by your very own metric. Nothing can exist outside of that unless it's God. Right. Because it's omnipresent. If anything can exist outside of God, it's God.
So
even then.
Yeah, so if this person, if people are existing outside of your religion, that is totally different.
If something exists outside of your particular range of belief, then it is not a condemnation.
That's right.
Of nature. It's not a condemnation of the world. It does not exist in conflict with your God. With God, with the idea of God in and of itself. Nothing can be in conflict with omnipotence.
Right. That's just by
nothing. By its very design. There is no conflict there. You are like there's nothing. It's omnipotence.
Right.
So the idea that there can be something that alienates you from your people to such an extent, and then you call that God.
God, right.
That can be no God. That can't be God.
That's right. That's
because
you.
God is with those people.
Right.
God is still very much with you, but you now can't recognize it because you never actually worshipped God. You never actually believed in God.
That's right.
What you believed was in a system of faith. You believed in a religion. Right? Religions are man-made.
Right.
And like most things man-made, we tend to outgrow them after a time. And you don't want to shift that around because now your religion has become inexorable. Your religion has become your God.
Right.
Your structure has become your faith. These things are incompatible when compared to an ever-shifting, ever-changing world.
Right.
A universe that's always shifting and changing, right? And by your very own by your very own definition, that's what God is.
Yes, because He's all knowing, all present, all this and all that.
God is that change, and everything before it and everything after it. If you can't see that, then that's not your people becoming out of step with your faith. It's your faith becoming out of step with your people.
Right.
All right. And that is where the saint exists. And the saint has literally, in his own words, been made unhuman by his faith. Like you say, he likens himself to bears and the birds. He's more at home in the forest amongst the animals than he is amongst people. Whereas Zarathustra's faith leads him directly to the people.
Right.
He has no choice as far as he's concerned because he loves mankind. And then he ends his whole little back and forth with the saint, right? By saying that I I have nothing to give you. Let me leave before I end up taking of you. And then he thinks to himself, and I'm surprised that the saint hasn't heard that God is dead. Right? And by God is dead, he means that that particular system of belief is no longer viable in the world today.
Correct. It's not working for mankind. It's not working for people. Correct.
I wrote here is that the perfect absolute moral structure could not survive the imperfect growth of man. And at that point, you have to make a choice.
Yeah.
You have to choose to either, move with the people and amend your faith, or become like the saint himself, become increasingly more anachronistic amongst your people until you can't even be amongst them.
Right.
And so now you have this open contempt for them.
But in that situation, your faith, it serves no one. It doesn't serve anyone. It's only in service, I guess, of you.
Not even of you.
Yeah, because I'm about to say
it's
because
made you unfit to exist with people.
You're so isolated now that you can't even be amongst people. You literally have to become a hermit in your own way. Yeah. Well, yeah, a bear or whatever.
Become an animal. Live amongst the animals. Live in the forest.
Right. Because you can't move along with
because people. You refuse to change.
Yeah.
That's right. And the only thing that you're costing yourself, you can't deny the people God. Because God, by your own definition, is inescapable.
Right.
There's nowhere you can go where you won't approach and have to confront the ideal of God by your own metric.
Right.
So the only one that you're denying is yourself.
Right.
The only person you're hurting is yourself. Right? But he takes pride in that distance because he holds on to that old system of belief because to him that is God.
Right. And that particular system worked at
a
particular time. That system doesn't work now. Right. Yes. Yes. Of course.
People subscribe to that particular system of belief for a time.
Right. And then they don't.
Well, even subscribe is
yeah.
People lived under.
Yeah.
that system of belief.
I'm willing to bet that people were rejecting it even when they were
being imposed
by it.
Have a lot of insurrections and a lot of inquisitions along the way. So it was never just this full sale we all believe like this.
Right.
But the church was a very powerful political and societal institution.
Right. So if you say,
I come in, it wasn't.
Right. I come in peace, but change your name, change your diet, do this, do that, those type of things. Then you have to question.
It represented a very, it represented a need from a societal political standpoint to justify itself before the ideas of God. The church was a political, systemic, societal, cultural fixture because people felt the need to justify themselves and find meaning in this grander context. But now the grander context has been made human. And all the lofty, if you would, weights of the old system of beliefs that people bent under, people no longer feel the need to bend under that weight anymore. Because now that's just the belief has been made more accessible. And the church has not been able to adapt to that accessibility. The saint has not been able to adapt to that accessibility. And now, like I say, he's become more anachronistic. And Zarathustra says that the saint does not know that God is dead. His system of belief has become obsolete.
Right.
Sorry.
Welcome to the city.
Yeah.
We are in
You
the
can hear
city.
all the sounds in the background.
We are in the
But
city for
yes,
real.
we shall continue.
Right.
Because Zarathustra goes from the saint and he walks into town.
Right.
Right? And he walks into town where there's a tightrope walk.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right? And everybody's in the town square waiting for the
Right.
show, waiting for the man to come out and walk on the tightrope.
Mm-hmm.
And Zarathustra thinks that this is his time. This is his time to speak to the people.
Right.
And show them, this new information that he has, this new path to enlightenment. Right? And he says to his people, and Zarathustra spoke thus to the people, I teach you the Overman. Man is something that should be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? All creatures hitherto have created something beyond themselves. Mm-hmm. And do you want to be the heir of this great tide and return to the animals rather than overcome man? What is the ape to men? A laughing stock or a painful embarrassment? And just so shall man be to the Overman, a laughing stock or a painful embarrassment. You have made your way from worm to man, and much in you is still worm. Once you were apes, and even now man is more of an ape than any ape. But he who is the wisest among you, he also is only a discord and hybrid of plant and of ghost. But do I bid you become ghosts or plants? Behold, I teach you the Overman. The Overman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say, the Overman shall be the meaning of the earth. I entreat you, my brothers, remain true to the earth, and do not believe those who speak to you of super-terrestrial hopes. They are poisonous, whether they know it or not. They are despisers of life, atrophying and self-poisoned men of whom the earth is weary, so let them be gone. Once blasphemy against God was the greatest blasphemy, but God died, and thereupon these blasphemers died too. To blaspheme the earth is now the most dreadful offense, and to esteem the bowels of the inscrutable more highly than the meaning of the earth. Once the soul looked contemptuously upon the body, and then this contempt was the supreme good. The soul wanted the body lean, monstrous, famished, so the soul thought to escape from the body and from the earth. Oh, this soul was itself lean, monstrous, and famished, and cruelty was the delight of this soul. But tell me, my brothers, what does your body say about your soul? Is your soul not poverty, and dirt, and a miserable ease? In truth, man is a polluted river. One must be a sea to receive a polluted river and not be defiled. Behold, I teach you of the Overman. He is the sea. In him your great contempt can go under. Mm-hmm. Right. So he goes out and I almost got my notebook down. We good. He goes out and he preaches to the people. He sermons to them. Right. And he goes on to try to teach them about the Overman. Right. Or you may be more familiar with the idea of the Ubermensch. Right. Right. And it's an idea that was co-opted by the Nazis, right? Of the perfect Aryan man and all that stuff. But Superman, right? And that is how Nietzsche kind of got associated with all that stuff. But Nietzsche is not anti-Semitic, and he's not a Nazi, not any of that stuff. Right. And what he's talking about when he says the Overman is that God is dead. The old system of belief is dead. These people who tell you to have faith in what he calls super terrestrial hopes, right? In the ineffable, unknowable God, right, ever beyond, ever out of reach. These people are poisonous, right, because that system of belief has become obsolete. Our world is knowing. That's right. Now we can understand it. We can test it. We can predict it, right, to such an extent that we can predict what's going to happen 500 years in the future if we're given enough data. Yeah, that's where we are now. This is what we know. So those people who tell you to worship the unknown, these people are thinking backwards, right? The Overman is someone who does not need to affirm life through the unknowable, ineffable. Right? The Overman is someone who is able to affirm their life through the earth, through what is known, through life itself, life for life's sake. Someone who is able to live not because of God, not because of some grander ideal of self or the universe, but just because life is worth living.
Right.
Someone who is able to affirm life because it is life. The perfect cycle. Right? And so that's what he says. That's what the next step of human, cultural genesis is to take us to this place of the Overman, where we are able to resist, right? This nihilism, right? To resist the pull of that vacuum now that God is dead. Right? We're able to resist that and affirm our life through our own force of will. Right? But the way I have some problems with how Zarathustra and Nietzsche lays out this Genesis, right? Because I agree fully that the ultimate affirmation of life is to live life for life itself, right? That you don't need anything greater than human existence to justify human existence, right? All those things. But when he says man is something that should be overcome, that is something that I vehemently disagree with. I wrote down even in my notes right here. Man is not, and I underlined it, something to be overcome. The conflict Zarathustra, i.e. Nietzsche, is talking about is man denying his own becoming. But to end that conflict does not mean overcoming the self, but understanding it. Right? And that's the thing, that's the metric where I believe, the wheel turns. The thing is, conflict is what got us here.
Right. I'm about to say, right. We're always setting up, yin yang, right? This type of conflict, and we always think that this conflict is something that's internal. It's an internal conflict, and we have to, overcome these
our vices.
Yeah, our vices or whatever. And the thing is that it's not so much to overcome it, but to understand it, because all of that is a part of who you are. It's all a part of human life and conditions and existence and being. So it's not necessarily that you're in conflict and so one side has to beat up the other side, because when you create this conflict, then something has to be good and then something has to be bad. So therefore, the bad can't be, because the good is supposed to be greater. And so now you're constantly fighting internally.
So now we begin to understand the dualistic, gods of Zarathustra's faith in this. Instead of Ahura Mazda and Ahriman, what you have is man and Overman. Right? Well, Overman and
man, right?
Because Overman is Ahura Mazda and man is Ahriman. Right? Where Ahriman, man, represents everything that we were. All of the trappings of this old existence that makes us increasingly unable to actually enjoy our lives and to live them in affirming ways. But the Overman, Ahura Mazda, that person is able to exist beyond these things. Because after the death of God, it is the Overman that is going to be able to affirm life, that is going to be able to enjoy and truly live. Right? Now, this whole metric is one that, like I said, I have philosophical issues with. Right? Because I can't remember exactly who it was, but I know it was a Catholic theologian way back in the day. I cannot remember his name, but He was the one who talked about, who tried to understand evil, right, and the existence of God, right? Like how can evil exist
right.
when there's God, right? And the conclusion that he came to is something that we've said on this show many times, is that, well, evil isn't a thing. Evil is merely the absence of good, just like cold is the absence of heat, and darkness is just the absence of light. It's not actually a thing.
Right.
That's nothing. That's nothing. The only thing that you're feeling is the absence of a thing.
Right.
You're not actually feeling anything, but the absence of a thing, right? So to oppose evil, right, is to oppose nothing, because there's nothing there. There is no conflict between good and evil,
Right.
because there is no evil. There's just an absence
Of
of
good.
good. There is no darkness, merely an absence of light. So there is no conflict, and that's how I like to think about it.
Right. And of course, I already know where some of our listeners are going to go. What do you mean that evil is a thing? Are you telling me slavery and Jim Crow and all of that? Those things were not evil.
No, they were evil. But you have to understand what evil is. Because the thing that made slavery and Jim Crow and all the evils of the world, whichever one you may choose, what makes them evil is not of themselves. It is the absence. Right? It is the absence of respect, the absence of dignity. The absence of kindness and decency. It's those things that make a thing evil. Right? So yeah, they are evil, but you have to understand what evil is. What you're experiencing when you experience evil is like experiencing darkness. Is that you're not experiencing darkness, because darkness isn't a thing. What you're experiencing is the lack of light. Right? So what this conflict that Zarathustra is creating here, I think, is self-destructive ultimately. Because to me, there is no conflict between the man and the Overman.
Right.
Because the man is supposed to become the Overman. Right? So if you defeat the man, then what's to become the Overman?
Right.
What's to become the Overman?
Right.
So for the man to become the Overman, the man must exist.
Yes, right. You can't. Right.
So
That's not the conflict.
If you were to defeat the man, overcome the man, right, you would zero sum.
Right.
You would render yourself nothing. Right? You would render yourself a no thing. Because you approach the world, you've used your philosophy, right? And this is another thing, like we've talked about so many times. You've taken your philosophy and you've weaponized it. Instead of utilizing it. You've weaponized it. And now you hold the world at the edge of your blade, at the point of your gun, which automatically condenses the whole world down to either two things. Right. An enemy or a victim. And sometimes it's both. And when you do that, that entire metric colors your whole experience of life. Because you're not experiencing life.
Life
right?
is now
You're
happening to you. Right. You're confronting. It's happening to you. Right.
You're battling life instead of experiencing it. Which means that everything now in that metric comes at a cost. You are ensuring loss. You are ensuring the absence. Because instead of, like I say, experiencing, you're confronting, you're trying to overcome something. And you keep trying to climb over that mountain, but all you're doing is digging yourself deeper and deeper into the hole. You can't defeat what you are. You can only understand it, right, and try to use that understanding to become what you feel you need to be. You know, you keep. Like I said, that's one of the things. Like,
Yeah.
why do we keep finding ourselves back here? Let's say, like we say, we're on that hamster wheel. We're thinking we could do it right. We could do it right. But it's a fundamentally broken ideal. It can't move you forward. It can only dig you deeper into the hole. You can't weaponize your existence. It services no one. Especially if you're trying to progress, if you're trying to move forward. So yes, the idea of becoming an Overman, of an Ubermensch, it's a beautiful one. But the thing is that I feel that Zarathustra has fallen into the same trap that the saint has fallen into. Right? Because as we see,
because he sees it as a conflict. It's a conflict with man, right?
As we see, just like God was in conflict with the devil,
right?
Or Ahura Mazda is in conflict with Ahriman, right? And we see just how out of step he is because he says these things, right? He makes his grand proclamation,
right?
And the people are like,
what?
Who?
What?
Who is that? I don't know. What is he talking about?
Overman. Hey, don't sit down somewhere.
Ain't nobody trying to hear that.
Yeah, trying to get the title.
Ain't nobody trying to hear that. Right? And so Zarathustra is
all of his
somewhat perplexed by this. He's perplexed.
Right.
So he thinks to himself, right? He thinks to himself, and he says, I tried to fill them with awe of the Overman. And that didn't work.
Right.
So instead, I shall try to fill them with contempt for the last man. Right? I shall try like the last man.
Right.
The ultimate devil. The man itself is just a demon.
Right.
But the last man,
the ultimate man
is Lucifer Morningstar himself.
Right.
Right? And so he says, man is a rope fastened between animal and overman, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous going across, a dangerous wayfaring, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous shuddering and staying still. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. What can be loved in man is that he is a going across and a down going. I love those who do not know how to live except their lives be a down going, for they are those who are going across. I love the great despisers, for they are the great venerators and arrows of longing for the other bank. I love those who do not seek beyond the stars for reasons to go down and to be sacrifices, but who sacrifice themselves to the earth, that the earth may one day belong to the Overman. Right? And he keeps going.
Yeah, going, right.
Right?
Right.
Like I said, digging himself further and further into that hole. Like I say, he loves the men who move against themselves.
Right.
Because those men are clearing the way for the Overman. And like we just said,
no.
Not really.
No.
That's not how you're going to reach this new place.
You have to go through. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not a.
It's not about
cutting
conflict.
off. Yeah,
it's
cutting
about
off.
Symbiosis. Synchronicity. Everything has to be moving in concert with each other. Right. Just like the worm became the ape, became the man.
Right.
The ape and the worm is all still a part of that.
That's right.
The worm hasn't been obliterated.
Right, obviously.
Right? The apes haven't been obliterated.
Obviously.
They're still a part of the ecosystem, but they're also, feeding in to a grander existence, even from a biological standpoint.
Yeah.
Feeding into our existence. So it's not about overcoming the worm and the ape on the inside.
Right.
Those things are necessary components to your being.
Right.
It's about understanding those parts of yourself and allowing them to move in concert with everything else to make you what you think you ought to be.
Right.
Right? But he keeps going.
Right.
And the people become more and more disillusioned.
Yeah. I'm aggravated a bit. Like, shut up already.
And so he says this. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star? Thus asked the last man and blinks. The earth has become small, and upon it hops the last man who makes everything small. His race is as inexterminable as the flea. The last man lives longest. We have discovered happiness, say the last men and blink. They have left the places where living was hard, for one needs warmth. One still loves one's neighbors and rubs oneself against them, for one needs warmth. Sickness and mistrust count as sins with them. One should go about warily. He is a fool who still stumbles over stones or over men. A little poison now and then that produces pleasant dreams, and a lot of poison at last for a pleasant death. They still work, for work is entertainment, but they take care the entertainment does not exhaust them. Nobody grows rich or poor anymore. Both are too much of a burden. Who still wants to rule? Who obey? Both are too much of a burden. No herdsman in one herd. Everyone wants the same thing. Everyone is the same. Whoever thinks otherwise goes voluntarily into the madhouse. Formerly all the world was mad, save the most acute of them, and blink. They are clever, and know everything that has ever happened, so there is no end to their mockery. They still quarrel, but they soon make up, otherwise indigestion will result. They have their little pleasures for the day and their little pleasure for the night, but they respect health. We have discovered happiness, say the last man, and blink. And so yes, like he said, he's trying to fill them with contempt of this last man. But he gets a very different reaction. And here ended Zarathustra's first discourse, which is also called the Prologue. For at this point, the shouting and mirth of the crowd interrupted him. Give us the last man, O Zarathustra, said the crowd. Make us into this last man. You can have the Overman. And all the people laughed and shouted. But Zarathustra grew sad. He had the opposite effect.
Right.
He tried to fill them with awe of the Overman and contempt of the last man.
Right.
But he ended up filling them with contempt for the Overman.
Right.
And awe for the last man.
Right. He was like,
oh my God. Right? But so let's break down what is the last man. Right? And why is the last man so contemptible? Right? So what I wrote down here is that the last man is a person unwilling to accept the little death to be born anew. The last man cannot fathom risking the comfort of certainty for the possibility of growth. He clings to the known, his culture, and considers stagnation as progress enough. Right?
Yeah.
So when I say is unwilling to accept a little death to be born anew, that's an allusion to doom.
Right, of course.
Right? Because the spice melange was the spice liqueur was called the little death. Right? When the waters of life, when Jessica took it to become a fully realized Reverend Mother. It is poison. You have to accept the little death. To be born anew into whatever you are meant to be. Right? But the last man can't accept that metric. Right. Refuses. Because like he said, he is comfortable. And he knows the world. He knows the world. He is certain of his world. Because his world has been constrained down to his one view. That one way of existence, which he calls culture. And we've said many times before, which is another doom thing, but that's in a later book. I think it's book 5, where there's the famous sentence, "Culture is a trap." Right, and it's like this is what he means. This is what he means.
Culture is a trap. Talk to the listeners. Yeah. What do you mean? Because culture is everything for us. Right?
Culture exists in the same way, in the same vein that religion exists. It's a form of understanding your reality. It's a system of understanding.
Right.
And like we said before, people tend to outgrow their systems.
Right.
Because people change, the world changed. People tend to outgrow the culture that is meant to house them.
Right.
But instead of the culture growing with them, the culture tries to constrain them back down to said culture and traditional ideals. Right?
Right.
And in doing so, the people become increasingly anachronistic and more regressive to such an extent that they become so delusional that they can no longer exist in the world.
Because the culture does not exist outside of the people. Obviously, you need people, to create the culture.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, what has been happening, at least from our viewpoint, is that we look at culture as this outside entity, as if it's always existed in a particular way. And I'm like, that can't be the case because people existed 1st. We are the creator of the culture. So therefore, if the people move in different directions, well, the culture has to move along with the people. So what has been happening is that people have, well, for those who are like, this is the only way that it can be because the culture dictates it that it's only this way. Well, actually, what you're not dictating the people, you're simply dictating the culture. And so that creates.
And then your culture creates tyranny. Because your culture is unfit for the people. But those arbiters of said culture don't recognize that.
Right.
They see the people as unfit for the culture. Idolatrous.
Right. And we know what happens when people do not fit into a particular paradigm that you think that they ought to fit in. I.e., that's how a lot of us have gotten over here. Okay? Because we did not fit into a particular paradigm. But that's
what the last man is. The last man is the person who refused to change. Like I said, who sees stagnation as progress enough. Who refuses to change, who refuses to move, who refuses to grow with, into the future, into what we're supposed to be becoming. And relishes in his certainty. Right? So he talks about the last man. He tries to get them to understand. And like I said, it has the opposite effect. They completely misunderstand. They laugh at him. Right? And they think that he's, some high and mighty, prophet who's on his high horse, who's come to them with all these, fancy schmancy beliefs.
Right.
And so during this time, the tightrope walker comes out.
Yeah.
And he's crossing his rope. But then a baboon shows up. This baboon has his face painted red and is very explicitly a symbol of the devil.
Right.
And this baboon comes and shakes the rope and he jumps over the tightrope walker. And the tightrope walker falls to his death. And he's mortally injured during his fall. And Zarathustra speaks to him and comforts him and decides that he's going to take him for burial. Right? So Zarathustra is walking with this corpse. And everybody, even the baboon came to him and told him that you will not rob me of my quarry.
That's right.
I will have him.
Right.
Even if that means I must take you as well. And even the grave diggers. Right. When he's walking out of the town, trying to walk up that hill.
Because he's carrying the body, right?
Carrying the body. The grave diggers tell him, well, it looks like the devil is going to get both of you.
Right.
And they're laughing at him.
Right.
Right? And on his way, he stops at a shack and he meets an old man. And the old man feeds him and tells Zarathustra to feed the corpse as well. When he says he's dead, he was like, well, you're carrying him.
Yeah.
You're carrying him with you, so you will feed him.
Very,
very symbolic.
That's right. That's right.
And so he does what the old man says, and he continues to carry this corpse.
Yeah.
Even when the wolves and the vultures are all
everybody.
He continues to carry this corpse.
Yes, right? Lord.
This corpse of the world that was, that died when the devil jumped over. What? And so he's holding on, and he sleeps. He goes to sleep with the corpse, right? And then he wakes up.
Right. He has an epiphany.
And he has an epiphany, right? And he says, a light has dawned for me. I need companions, living ones, not dead companions, and corpses which I carry with me wherever I wish. But I need living companions who follow me because they want to follow themselves and want to go where I want to go. a light has dawned for me. Zarathustra shall not speak to the people, but to companions. Zarathustra shall not be herdsman and dog to the herd. To lure many away from the herd, that is why I have come. The people and the herd shall be angry with me. The herdsman shall call Zarathustra a robber. I say herdsmen, but they call themselves the good and the just. I say herdsmen, but they call themselves the faithful of the true faith. Behold the good and the just. Whom do they hate most? Him who smashes their tables of values, the breaker, the lawbreaker. But he is the creator. Behold the faithful of all things, whom they hate the most. Him who smashes their table of values, the breaker, the lawbreaker. But he is the creator. The creator seeks companions, not corpses, or herds, or believers. The creator seeks fellow creators, those who inscribe new values on a new table. The Creator seeks companions and fellow harvesters, for with him everything is ripe for harvesting. But he lacks his 100 sickles, so he tears off the ears of corn and his vets. The Creator seeks companions, and such as know how to whet their sickles. They will be called destroyers in despite of good and evil, for they are harvesters and rejoicers. Right?
Bury the dead.
this is what he does. This
Bury
is the conclusion he comes to. He we haven't gotten to it, but he buries this corpse, not in the intended place, but he puts the corpse in a hollow tree and tells the corpse that I've carried you long enough.
That's right.
For I shall no longer try to carry the dead. Right? And by the dead, he means those people whom are far too certain of their world.
I'm not going to even talk to you anymore.
I'm not here to create a herd.
That's right.
But I am here to go amongst the herd and to take a bit of your cattle. Because there are people amongst that herd who are creators. Even though they will call them evil. They will call them lawbreakers and law smashers. But those are the creators. Those are the ones who are looking to inscribe new values on new tables of faith. It's those ones that I need. I don't need followers. I need companions. I need other. I am a creator, and I need other creators.
That's right.
I need people willing to create, willing to challenge what it is here. Not those not the dead, not the walking dead. No more stiff corpses. Right. And what he literally says, he wants creators, harvesters, and rejoicers. These people who are looking, who have fallen out of step, right? Who themselves, right, are not anachronistic, but are living in an anachronistic world.
That's right.
Right? Whom they are beginning to outpace.
That's right.
From a cultural standpoint.
They know something is awry.
And they're trying to burgeoning onto that new place. That's who Zarathustra is going to go after now. Right? That's who Zarathustra is going to go after. And he concludes by saying he's going to go under. Right? He's going to undertake this impossible task. Right? And his very last thing he sees out in the forest is he sees an eagle with a snake wrapped around his neck. Right? And to him he recalls the saint. Right? Yeah. And he sees that those animals, and he thinks that those animals are waiting for him. Right? Because the eagle is representative of Zarathustra's wisdom. And the snake is representative of Zarathustra's pride. His wisdom wears his pride around his neck. And when his wisdom goes, his pride will leave him as well. Right? So the bird is flying overhead. It flies away and he says, when Zarathustra had said this, he recalled the words of the saint in the forest, sighed, and spoke thus to his heart. I wish I were wise. I wish I were wise from the heart of me, like my serpent, but I am seeking the impossible. Therefore I ask my pride always to go along with my wisdom. He likens his journey to doing the impossible. Right? Hell yeah. And that's another thing we've touched on many a times on the show about, even if it's impossible, it's the only thing worth doing. Right? And that's the journey that Zarathustra has
that is the uncertainty. The impossibility is the uncertainty.
Not the unknown.
Yes, the uncertainty. Correct.
The impossible.
Right.
You know where you're going.
Right.
You know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's right there in view.
Mm-hmm.
It may be a question if you'll ever reach it.
Right.
Right? It may be up for grabs.
Yes, of course. Mm-hmm.
But you know the way you're meant to be moving.
Mm-hmm.
Zarathustra, after encountering the people and understanding,
mm-hmm.
right, what he's actually dealing with,
right,
and having to carry that corpse for so long, having to feed the corpse and fend it from the predators.
Yes, it was beautiful.
He has laid it down to
right.
rest, and now he is looking for creators among creators, and thus ends the prologue.
Correct.
Of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, hoping that his wisdom and his pride will be able to see him through on this impossible task.
Right.
So, yes, we will be continuing going. I think there's four subsequent stories and not stories, but chapters in total after this. And so, yeah, if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments. And once again, thank you for hearing us out.
Thank you.